Hello Internet, Taliesin here, and it's 8.2! 8.2 is here for reals! We've got Naz'jatar, we've got Mechagon, we've got all new Heart of Azeroth goodness to be getting on with, but, Internet, we're not going to be talking about any of that today, because of course, with the new patch, there is also a brand spanking new cinematic that all of us will have seen by now. It plays after you accept the very first Rise of Azshara quest to take you to the continent itself, and before any of the gameplay has even started. It is very much your introduction to the new patch, but there is a lot going on here. It's as beautiful and dramatic as you'd expect. There's a couple of surprise little turns, and overall, weirdly, it's a cinematic that poses as many questions as it answers, and we are going to be talking about all of this in today's Taliesin Talks deep dive analysis. So first, before we go any further, a warning, because this is not a reaction video, okay? I've already watched this a lot of times, and if you haven't already seen Rise of Azshara, then honestly, this is going to be a really terrible way of watching it, because we're going to be stopping and starting and going back and maybe skipping bits and generally just talking and geeking out all over the top of it. So if that's you, you just want to watch this cinematic, I don't know, maybe just play the game. It's seriously like the first thing you see when you log in, okay? For the rest of you though, join us as we dive into the Rise of Azshara intro cinematic. We talk Azshara, N'Zoth, Nathanos, the Blade of the Black Empire, Sylvanas, and ask, who is pulling the strings? Who really laid the trap? And who is playing who, okay? Go, 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 go. I feel to really appreciate how good this opening shot is, it's worth having just the briefest of story recaps. At the end of the Crucible of Storms raid, Horde players found the Blade of the Black Empire lying handily on the floor by N'Zoth's massive eye, which is pretty much where we left it after we bought it to awaken him and release Xal'atath before the Crucible of Storms raid. Hordes take the blade to Sylvanas, who, to be fair, is very pleased to see it, and says this blade is the compass that will guide us to victory. War is a living thing. It writhes, it grows, twisting and turning until its final form is revealed. At the beginning of 8.2, Sylvanas has a plan. Nathanos Blightcaller tells the player to ready themselves for a mission of the highest priority. Meanwhile, Spymaster Shaw has told the Alliance players that the Horde are up to something and that they have to go and sort them out. And so, we begin here with this opening shot, and like we see in nearly every single one of these cinematics, I feel like I'm constantly saying this, a character is introduced to us from behind. The team just love doing this, and it serves a number of different purposes in different cinematics, but it's especially effective in this one. Most obviously, it allows a really dynamic, lurching, standing at the front of the ship in a churning sea establishing image, but then as the camera almost catches up to Nathanos here, it's almost like we are the Alliance fleet running down our prey. But most importantly, as the camera swings round to the front of the Banshee Queen's main man, then we get this terrific reveal of the Blade of the Black Empire in his clutches. And just as Sylvanas promised, Nathanos is seemingly using the blade literally as a compass to guide the way. The feeling of constant movement in this cat and mouse game is pushed even further as this single opening shot continues to pan upwards to reveal the Alliance and Kultiran fleet hot on their tail. And side note, as usual, the sound design is terrific here too. The waves crash loudly and dangerously from all directions, and the creaking of the wooden ships gives us a real sense of how these relatively flimsy vessels are straining under the force of being pushed to their very limit in this chase. Keep on them! And after we're introduced to Nathanos' opposite number, Genn Greymane, being a very good boy and urging even more effort from his crew to catch up with his prey, this aerial viewpoint, which reminds us of two things. One, how much stronger the Alliance forces are than the Horde, because this, don't forget, is all that's left of the Horde fleet after it was decimated in the battle for Dazar'alor. We've been told in-game dialogue how that leaves the Alliance on the brink of absolute victory in this war, but this is the first time that we've seen that in reality. As the combined Alliance and Kultiran fleet bears down on the Horde, this could literally be the end of the war right now, in this moment. But two, seeing them all from above makes these huge war galleons look tiny and insignificant on the vast sea. The sea is where the real strength, the real power lies in this situation, and it seems like the puny mortals in their little wooden toys may have forgotten that just for a moment. And as the camera swoops down beyond the ships, crashes through the surface of the waves in this shot, which is just cool anyway, but which also reminds me of that famous passage from Moby Dick, which starts, "Beholding the tranquil beauty and brilliance of the ocean's skin, one forgets the tiger's heart that pants beneath it." And as we make our way further into the depths, listen to the drums in the soundtrack. Because above the surface, they were just exciting war drums for an exciting chase, but under the water, their audio quality obviously shifts to become deeper, more reverby, and a lot more like the manic old god drums from the Azshara Warbringer, which I think is an absolutely awesome touch. And here is the panting tiger's heart beneath. This beautiful shot of Azshara's Eternal Palace, which of course will be the climactic raid in 8.2. And the final boss of that raid, Queen Azshara, who, surprise, surprise, is introduced to us from behind, and we'll see why in just a moment. Interestingly though, the exterior shot of the palace clearly establishes that we are underwater with its distorted images and bubbles, but apparently Azshara likes her throne room to be sealed off and water-free, which, when you think about it, is a bit weird, considering as a massive tentacly fish person, it would presumably be much easier for her to move around if they filled this room with water, right? Well, the reason for that is actually brilliantly in character and on message.
They have arrived. Wonderful.
It's simply so that she can have this waterfall of running water in her chamber that acts as a mirror. And look, I know she's an evil fish elf and stuff, okay, but am I allowed to say that she's super hot? Because she is, okay? She's totally super hot. But the first close-up we see of her is of her reflection as she straight up admires herself, literally stroking her own reflection's cheek. And this is brilliant. Not only does it recall the one thing that everyone really knows about Azshara, that she's really vain, but that in her golden red eyes, she really has no equal. Because here she is, in her moment of triumph, all her plans coming together after 10,000 years, and the best person she can possibly think to celebrate with is herself. When she says,
Wonderful.
we can't really be sure if she's talking about the news she's just been given, or just her. And as she gives her orders,
Set the Tidestone, won't you?
there is no concern at all that it might go wrong. No adrenaline, no feeling of danger, just supreme, almost nonchalant confidence in her brilliance and impending success. And wait, did she just say Tidestone?
Tidestone.
Yeah, she did, yeah. Okay, we'll come back to that in just a moment. But for now, Azshara's moment of alone time with herself is interrupted by a guest into her chamber. And as a viewer, we are told exactly what Azshara thinks of this particular guest instantly, as her expression shifts from a loving admiration of her own reflection to a much crueler, maybe slightly annoyed, but definitely disdainful glance over her shoulder.
Feeling anxious, are we?
And this cloud of whispering void smoke, which is also very suggestive of dark squid ink, gathers across the floor, writhing upward behind her. But she still doesn't turn round. She still keeps her back to it, just like she keeps her back to us. None of us are worthy of her actual face.
How frustrating it must be for you. Still locked away.
And her dismissive and patronizing tone is glorious, because this, we can only assume, is N'Zoth. Or at least as much of an outside physical presence as N'Zoth can currently muster away from wherever his actual form may be imprisoned. Now, I've heard some speculation that this isn't actually the final old god, that this dark cloud is more reminiscent of death magic, and that might be the case. I suppose I'm never keen to rule out any possibilities completely in these things, and I'm certain that the similarities between this inky form and Sylvanas' Banshee in the BFA cinematic are absolutely intended, but I also think we have to kind of respect the story that this cinematic is clearly trying to tell us, and I think this story is clearly telling us this is N'Zoth. Last time we saw him in the presence of Azshara was 10,000 years ago in the Warbringer, his huge golden eye dwarfing his new servant. But after all of this time, he is still in chains, and Azshara has absolutely zero fear of him, talking to him like he's a petulant child, chiding him for being more anxious about all of this going wrong than she is. You get the feeling, don't you, that she taunts him like this quite a lot. She clearly enjoys it. She doesn't even flinch as this shadow approaches her, and we see it coming from N'Zoth's point of view, like he is the monster in a horror movie about to take out a helpless victim. But there's nothing helpless about the Queen of the Naga. And this is very important, okay, because there's a lot of speculation still after this cinematic that Azshara is purposely keeping N'Zoth imprisoned, or that she's betrayed him somehow, and that is definitely not the case.
How frustrating it must be for you, still locked away, so powerless. For now.
Even as she mocks him, she reminds him that she is going to fulfill her mission and she is going to release him from his chains. She fully intends upholding her part of this bargain. It's how she will achieve her true power after all. This segment with N'Zoth, by the way, is by far my favourite of the whole cinematic, partly because Azshara is just so basically awesome. I am so glad I kept my gift of N'Zoth, because honestly, if it comes down to it and I get the chance, sorry Anduin, sorry Azeroth, but I'm on her side, okay? I will do whatever she says. I am in. But I love how this helpless void ink form of N'Zoth works as a great contrast to the thick, powerful limbs of the old god that we saw in that Warbringer. And I love that N'Zoth clearly hates Azshara. He wants nothing more than to strike out at her. He tries to, both in the Warbringer and here, and both times he stops himself because he needs her, and she knows it. But remember what Sylvanas said, war is a living thing. It writhes, it grows, twisting and turning until its final form is revealed. Well, this whispering squidding void cloud, this is a living thing, writhing, growing, twisting and turning, and soon its final form will be revealed, which you can't help but feel will be very bad news for us, and maybe for Azshara too, but for the time being at least, all it takes is a slight movement of her queenly hand to tame this writhing mass and make it retreat again. And this is another great echo from the Warbringer, and the first time she encountered N'Zoth in his beautiful, kindly fish form.
But at last, you're about to see what I do best.
You're about to see what I do best, which we'll come back to, but next we get our first glimpse of the Tidestone of Golganeth about to be used. And yes, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, how do they have that? Don't we have that? Didn't we rescue it from the Naga in Legion like twice? And yeah, we did, that's a good point, but in fairness, last we saw of it, we used it to gain access to the lower reaches of the Tomb of Sargeras, at which point we got zapped to kill Jaden's disco ship, at which point we all thought we were going to die until Illidan saved us, at which point we realised that he put the demon homeworld into our own orbit and we needed to jump on the Blingdakar and sort out a bunch of Dark Titans, so I can see why going back and keeping an eye on the Tidestone could have gotten slightly buried under more immediate concerns. But still, it was suggested that this might be explained in this cinematic, but it's certainly not explained in this cinematic, and if there's a lesson to take from all this, it's that with Xal'atath, the Tidestone, and later on, the Restoration Shaman artifact, Sharasdal, all being things that I thought I had, but later turning out to be things that the baddies had, I'm basically rubbish and shouldn't be trusted with anything of any value at any point. That's the lesson. And now we get to the cool actiony bit of the cinematic to really set up the new patch, because as the immense power of the Tidestone is unleashed and the bright light of Titan energy hurtles upwards into the sky, bursting from the ocean depths, one particular undead ranger captain looks remarkably unsurprised by this turn of events, doesn't he? The same cannot be said, though, for Genn and the Alliance chumps, as the spectacular horror of a massive great hole in the ocean opens up in front of them, and ever since the location and setup for 8.2 was revealed at BlizzCon last year, I have looked forward to this moment and seeing what the cinematics team does with it. For 8 months, I've been saying I cannot wait to see the sea parting and ships literally falling down it, and obviously the team don't disappoint, because they never disappoint, because they're awesome. The Horde fleet has already been instantly swallowed and is totally gone, and as the humans scramble and shout, their puny wooden toys never stand even the slightest chance against the might of the ocean and its queen. And look, I know that when Azshara says, "This is what I do best," she means like super clever plans that totally always work and totally make her the winner. But honestly, another thing she seems to do really well is make big massive holes in the world. First when she pretty much forced the Sundering, and now this. Also, and I'm not making light of this, okay, but I really want to appreciate this shot of Genn here, because we know he's the bestest boy, but this is the first time we've seen Genn as he might appear in a cute video that his owner Anduin posted on Facebook, and I really like that. I mean, he's terrified because he's about to die by falling through an impossible hole in the sea, but it's cute though, you know. And as the screams of the dying sailors get drowned out by the cacophonous roar of the parting ocean, everything goes black and silent. This next bit is so hammy and brilliant, and I just love it. It's different for Horde and Alliance, and we'll watch both, but I think the Alliance version is slightly more effective just because it's got the better view. But the blurry vision slowly stabilizing and the desperate panting of Genn or Lor'themar as they look around with terror at this alien and undoubtedly incredibly dangerous environment that they find themselves in, as the actual supervillain's cackling laughter breaks through the silence and echoes around Naz'jatar. And it's very fitting that Azshara's closing line is
Welcome to Naz'jatar. I've been waiting for you.
I've been waiting for you, because she really has. This is, after all, the culmination of 10,000 years of planning and waiting for her moment. And her moment, internet, is now. So the cinematic is great, there's no surprises there, but what's interesting and even ever so slightly annoying about it is just how many questions it raises. Because I don't know about you, internet, but I was hoping that this little film might go some way towards answering a few questions, like, well, obvious ones, like how did the Naga get the Tidestone, but also, why did Sylvanas send her ships out to the ocean like she did? Did she know about Azshara's plot? Did the Blade of the Black Empire tell her to do it? If so, whose voice did she hear? How much did Nathanos know? And honestly, why is Lady Ashvane now leading an army of fish warriors on Naz'jatar when the last we saw of her, she was hitching a ride with Sylvanas on the Banshee's whale? Not only are none of these questions answered, but the fact that they are so specifically not answered is incredibly suspicious and means that it must be intentionally hiding something that's really going on here. So I want to address a couple of common views on this. First of all, why did Sylvanas send the fleet out to the ocean like she did? Well, as anyone will tell you, it's because the Blade of the Black Empire told her to. An opinion that everyone who has been following this has, and which means that Sylvanas deliberately sent the fleet into Azshara's trap, knowing that it would happen. Ian Hazakostas has literally said out loud when talking about 8.2 that the Blade tells Sylvanas to do that. But Ian also said that the Naga having the Tidestone would be explained, and that totally wasn't. And the thing is that there is actually no in-game evidence to prove that this is what happened. We never see or hear it happen. No character in-game ever mentions it happen. So there's nothing in-game to suggest that the Blade of the Black Empire, and remember that's all it is now because Xal'atath herself was released from it, has whispered or spoken to Sylvanas. Yeah, but come on, she knows about Azshara's trap and purposely sends her fleet into it, right? Well, maybe. I mean, there's these dialogue lines that suggest that's definitely the case, where she tells Nathanos, the Blade will guide you to the rendezvous. Casualties on both sides will be substantial. Consider this an opportunity to weed out the disloyal. And look, full disclosure, I can't actually tell you with complete certainty that these lines are even in the game, because I've never seen them. They've never popped for me throughout the entire questline. I've only read them on Wowhead, and no one can tell me exactly when they happen, but I am willing to accept that I probably just missed them and they are there. But even if they are, this isn't, in my opinion, proof that Sylvanas knew about Azshara's trap. In fact, I'm willing to maintain that it's quite likely she didn't. Because, okay, Nathanos looks very unsurprised when the sea opens up in front of him, but when you speak to him in-game afterwards, he says, that was unexpected. And then, far more importantly, goes off on his own mission, walking into the sea with the Blade of the Black Empire. So here's the thing, Nathanos' rendezvous, the one the dagger is leading him to like a literal compass, is not in Naz'jatar, which makes me think that Azshara's trap really was a surprise, or at least not the main point of his journey. Maybe it was part of the plan to accidentally fall into the trap to get the Alliance off their tail, but it's not Nathanos' final destination, which obviously begs the question, if his rendezvous isn't with Azshara, and it's not with N'Zoth, and it's not even the Lady Ashvane, who is it with? I've got a feeling we won't be finding out until 8.25 at the very earliest. If I was a betting man, which I'm not, but if I were, my money would be on Nathanos and honestly maybe Sylvanas doing a little disappearing act until some point in 8.3 now, when they'll reappear as the United Horde and Alliance battle N'Zoth, and the Banshee Queen's real plan will be made clear. As it stands though, things are looking bleak for the Horde and Alliance, stranded on Naz'jatar. And yeah, I know you can get a portal back whenever you like, but it's implied that that's only because you have the Heart of Azeroth, and that your chums Lorthamar, Tharissa, Jaina, and Genn are stuck there fighting for their lives. They have totally fallen into Azshara's trap. But if Sylvanas used the trap to buy the time that Nathanos needs for his secret meeting, then really, who is playing who at this point? I think, powerful and mighty and urgent though the threat of the ex-elf queen is, Sylvanas' plans seem one step ahead of Azshara's right now. The question is she one step ahead of N'Zoth? Oh, what do you think, guys? How did this cinematic rate for you? Did it answer the questions that you had? Am I totally wrong in my interpretation of some of the things I mentioned here? Is Sylvanas in league with Azshara and N'Zoth like some speculate? Or is there a much bigger game going on here that we don't know about? And honestly, how did Ashvane get to be leading an army in Naz'jatar though? Let us know in the comments below. And thanks for joining us today. If you like this video, don't thank us, thank our patrons who give their actual real life money to make all of these videos happen, but especially this one, because honestly right now, there is nothing that I'd rather be doing than playing 8.2. If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. Remember, my name is Steve Danusa. No, my name is Taliesin, from me and Evitel. Until next time, cheerio.